The sixth terrace wasn't just abandoned, it was devoured. Granted, everything in the Forbidden Temple carried the weight of ages, but whereas buildings and other terraces were merely neglected, the ones here were corpses. Walls caved in, roofs sagging under moss and rot. Roots thick as torsos snaked through the rubble, splitting stone, curling over fallen beams. Compared to this, the rest of the temple looked like a manicured garden, and that's saying a lot. It didn't matter how long I'd lived among these ruins. There were some things one simply doesn't grow accustomed to. And believe me, squelching through centuries of godforsaken muck ranks high on that list. The trees had claimed everything. Their trunks bulged grotesquely, oozing sap in slow, glistening streams. Vines strangled the remaining pillars of ancient ruins, dragging them into the dirt. The air stank of rot. What little light filtered through the canopy above was greenish and sickly, poisoned as it bled through the leaves. Beneath our feet, moss smothered the ground, broken only by clusters of decayed leaves curling inward like shriveled hands. No birds. No wind. Only the low groan of the trees, as if they were breathing in restless sleep. Dhalâra walked ahead of me, her kimono brushing against the undergrowth. She didn't say a word. She didn't look back. She moved with quiet purpose, like she'd done this 100 times before. I followed close enough to see her silhouette through the gloom, but not close enough to feel reassured by her presence. This place didn't feel like it was meant for people. Not anymore, at any rate. We didn't speak until the trees began to pull back. The undergrowth thinned, the shadows shifted, and we stepped into what might have once been a garden. The trees here stood further apart, their branches forming a jagged ring around an open clearing. The air grew heavier, suffocating. Glowing flowers lined the edges of the clearing, their faint blue and violet light pulsing gently, as if breathing. They didn't illuminate the space so much as deepen its shadows, casting strange, shifting patterns across the ruins. And then I saw it. The Tower of Slumber stole the air from my lungs. At first, I didn't know what I was looking at. It wasn't a tree. It wasn't a mushroom. And it most definitely wasn't a tower. And yet it loomed there, like something out of a fever dream. Impossible, unnatural. The base was stone, but it was nearly swallowed by the roots and vines coiling around it like snakes. Above that, the structure twisted into wood, or something like wood, its trunk thick and gnarled as if a dozen trees had been forced to grow together, their shapes writhing in agony, contorted into something alien. The top, though, that was the strangest part. It had the unmistakable shape of a mushroom cap, but nothing like the ones I'd seen in Valeswood or in the Forsaken Garden. This one was colossal, as wide as a ship, its surface mottled with dark, pulsing spots that seemed to shift whenever I stared too long. Beneath the cap, twisted branches jutted out, curling like skeletal limbs. Drapes of lichen hung from them, swaying faintly in the still air, their tendrils trailing all the way to the ground, like the tattered robes of something ancient and forgotten. And then there were the things climbing it. Initially, I thought they were parts of the lichen, some trick of the shining light. But then they moved. Slick and glistening, their limbs slithered along the branches, curling and uncurling with a strange, hypnotic rhythm. And though I couldn't see eyes, or faces for that matter, I knew they were watching. Even after 5 months in this place, I wasn't prepared for this. The Tower of Slumber wasn't just strange. It was wrong. I turned to Dhalâra, desperate for an explanation. Something, anything to make sense of the grotesque structure looming before us. But she just stood there, her face as calm and impassive as ever, hands clasped neatly in front of her, like she'd just shown me the way to the local bakery. Dhalâra, who exactly is this French person? I asked, glancing nervously at the grotesque amalgamation of tree, mushroom, and gods know what.
A druid?
Yes, you said that, I said, exhaling sharply. But what kind of person would live inside such a thing?
A druid, obviously.
Oh, you are impossible.
So,
she said, not even noticing my frustration.
Are you ready to go in?
Will you come with me?
Would you like that?
Of course. I'm not stepping foot inside that monstrosity alone. Her lips curled into something just shy of a smile.
Okay, come then.
She turned and started towards the tower. I hesitated for half a breath before skittering after her. Have you ever met him before? I asked.
Once, when we were little.
We?
Ezra was having nightmares. Ajura was concerned, so she sent her here to have them divined. Well, I came along.
So, you've only met him once? Years ago? Yesterday you made it sound like you almost know this druid.
Sesh isn't scary, Emilia. He's just,
She paused, tilting her head slightly.
You'll see.
I stopped dead in my tracks. What's that supposed to mean?
It means that you will see.
That's not helpful, you know.
But it's true. You will see.
She repeated, and continued toward the Tower of Slumber. The stairs leading up to its base were carved directly into the fibrous surface of the tower. They didn't seem like they'd been made intentionally, more like they'd grown that way, worn into existence by some unseen force over centuries. Each step squished faintly underfoot, damp with something I didn't want to identify. And then there was the entrance itself. A great gaping maw, greeting us at the top of the stairs, its edges jagged and uneven, like the torn lips of some ancient creature mid-yawn. I stopped at the threshold, my breath catching. That's the entrance?
Of course,
Dhalâra said, already stepping forward, utterly unbothered. It looks like it's going to eat us.
It won't,
she said, continuing ahead. I looked up again and wrinkled my nose. Why did absolutely everything in this place have to be so sticky? I took a deep breath and followed Dhalâra. Inside the structure, if one could even call it that, it felt as though we'd stepped into a vast underground cavern. The air shifted immediately, cool and damp against my skin, the walls lined with jagged stalactites dripping faintly with moisture. Glowing bugs skittered across the rough surface, their faint blue-green light pulsing as they moved, casting soft halos against the stone. Below us the floor was uneven and glistening, slick with rivulets of water pooling in the cracks and crevices. And the sound, it wasn't silence exactly. It was the sound of liquid dripping steadily, echoing faintly in the massive chamber. Somewhere in the distance, a low hum pulsated through the air, so subtle it was almost more a feeling than a sound. Is it raining in here? I asked, holding at my hand to feel the faint drizzle that misted the air around us.
Yes,
Dhalâra said, not even glancing up. How is that even possible? A drop landed on my lips, startlingly sweet. At the center of the cavern, A towering spire rose, its surface glistening like wet bone. The spire spiraled upward, impossibly tall, its form tapering slightly as it stretched higher and higher, disappearing into the darkness above. A staircase wound around its circumference, narrow and uneven, leading up into the shadows. I pointed at it. "And what is that?" Dhalâra stopped beside me, glancing up at the spire as though seeing it for the first time. Hmm? I repeated, incredulous.
I don't know.
You don't know?
Why would I?
You've been here before.
I was a child. I didn't ask questions about the architecture.
Architecture? I scoffed, gesturing wildly at the spire. You call this architecture?
It's just a staircase,
she said simply, already walking toward it. A staircase? I muttered under my breath. Sure. Just a staircase inside a tower made of gods know what, leading into gods know where. Dhalâra turned slightly, arching a brow.
Are you coming, or should I leave you here to figure things out with the bugs?
It was funny. Not that I think she was aware of it. And yet, I didn't laugh. In this place, nothing could ever make me laugh. I glanced at the insects crawling across the cavern walls, their faintly glowing bodies twitching as they moved. My skin prickled. I'm coming, I said, forcing my feet to follow her, even as the weight of the place pressed down on me, like the darkness above was waiting. Dhalâra led me to the staircase spiraling around the inner spire, her steps measured and steady, as though this was nothing to even scoff at. I followed close behind, casting a wary glance upward at the spire disappearing into the dark above. The stairs were narrow, slick underfoot, and wound impossibly high. With each step, the glow of the books lining the walls became our only light, their eerie, flickering luminance casting odd shadows across the ascent. We climbed, and climbed, and climbed. How much farther? I asked, trying to mask the strain creeping into my voice.
We're getting there.
Her answer was, of course, utterly unhelpful, but still, I had to admit that her calm was reassuring. I would never have had the courage to continue without it. After what felt like an eternity, the spire changed. Other pathways began to branch out from the central staircase, like slender bridges arching out into the void. They stretched out towards glowing archways set into the outer walls of the tower, each one leading to something entirely new, entirely otherworldly. I stopped, peering through one of the nearest openings. What is this place? Dhalâra paused ahead of me but said nothing, as though it wasn't worth explaining. Through the archways I could see glimpses of bizarre inner chambers. In one, an entire forest grew, its trees sagging with heavy, luminescent fruit. In another, a vast cavern yawned, its walls slick with moisture, translucent stalagmites and stalactites curving together like glassy teeth. In yet another, there was a chamber so warped and unnatural it made my stomach churn just to look at it. Walls curling in on themselves like the petals of a dead flower, shifting slightly, as if breathing. But there were no people, no druids, no spirit. No one. Only the glowing bugs crawling along the surfaces. And moths! Large silvery moths, their wings larger than my hands. They drifted through the void with an eerie, unhurried grace, their flight so soundless it made my skin crawl. Eventually, we reached the top. The stairway opened up into a vast chamber, and I realized where we were. We're in the mushroom cap, aren't we? If it could be called that. I added under my breath, recalling how bizarre the tower had looked from outside. The chamber was vast, its slick fungal walls stretching upward into curved, uneven ridges that pulsed faintly. They framed the space like the inside of some grotesque organic shell. The air was thick with the stench of rot, and light oozed from bulbous lumps dangling from the ceiling. They reminded me of that thing at the back of one's throat, and I grimaced at the realization. Only parts of the chamber were lit, small pockets of light scattered through the darkness. Dusty books rose like misshapen towers of their own. They were stacked haphazardly, some threatening to topple. Among them were strange contraptions, brass instruments shaped like spirals and constellations, jars of faintly glowing liquid, and grotesque masks hanging from the walls, their hollow eyes staring out into the dark. And yet, there was no one here. "Dhalâra," I whispered, stepping closer to her. "I don't like this."
You don't like a lot of things.
I glared at her, but she ignored me, walking deeper into the chamber. I followed, my fingers tugging at a strand of my hair. The silence was suffocating. The only sound the faint squelch of our steps on the fungal floor. And then I noticed I was reaching for her hand. I didn't even mean to. My fingers just brushed against hers, almost as if to test if she'd pull away. She didn't. The small comfort steadied me. Until I saw movement. Something stirred in the shadows. I squinted into the gloom, certain I hadn't imagined it. The shadows shifted like breath against a curtain, then stilled again. My pulse quickened. "Did you see that?"
See what?
Something moved. Something big. Dhalâra tilted her head, her eyes narrowing into the shadows. The silence stretched, heavy and expectant. She opened her mouth. But before she could speak, a hulking figure stepped into the light. I looked upon it, and I screamed.